Hey everyone, welcome to Kapashed. So I'm going back to my roots. Today, this video is going to be about my customs, Fordo Phase 2. I started off the channel wanting to do showcase more of my customs. So yeah, I pretty much got through my first batch, and then afterwards I haven't produced much. Life happens, great things actually. So yeah, this kind of fell by the wayside. But I've been doing a lot of review videos. I'm happy a lot of people like them. But I'm coming back to my roots, and today I'm going to showcase this, which is actually going to be, well, everybody remember the Fordo Phase 1 I did previously, and also the accompanying lieutenant, right? Lieutenant Arc Trooper? I don't know. Anyways, somebody's going to be criticizing me about that bit. So today, it's going to be about this. And the thing is, this is a relatively simple exercise. It's basically I got the head sculpt from John Walker Customs, and also the shoulder pauldron, which of course the shoulder pauldron looks different on the show, but I decided to use this one instead to do a more live action interpretation of it. The other part is going to be a long video that documents how I got this one done. It's in some of the process I went through just to give people an idea of what it takes to do this thing. It's actually not that difficult, but it is a bit laborious. So anyways, without further ado, here comes the part that's going to show you the process of how I accomplish this. Hey guys, today I am going to do a custom video just showcasing my process. It is going to be the Phase 2 Captain Fordo in the Tarkovsky Clone Wars. Did I pronounce that right? Anyways, so this is gonna be pretty straight up, pretty easy. I would think I'll probably be able to finish it within a day or two. So what I have on hand over here is a head sculpt from, if I could focus in right, is a head sculpt from J Walker Customs. And recently they start shipping to Hong Kong, so I'm very happy. And this is going to be a realistic, or well, I would say live action interpretation of it, using live action armor, stuff that shows up in live action. So from John Walker Custom, I actually got one of these type of shoulder pads. I know the shoulder pad he used in the animation series is a bit different, but I am going to go with this one instead. And then there are actually some other little parts around here. Where is it? Here you go. Here. So in this little bag over here, I actually got two of these, and I might probably forego using this piece over here, which goes on the chest over here. I might actually forego using this. I am absolutely not going to do the ribbon, and the reason is because I don't know. I just think that I just want to keep it toyetic. I want to do something like what they do with greed, which is just a sculpted part of the part that actually comes down here, the straps. I'm going to sculpt it in with epoxy putty, right? And then there's of course that little tiny buckle over here. Here you go. This little piece. I don't know whether or not you can see it. This little sculpted piece. I'm probably going to paint it in silver. And the other reasons why I'm doing this doing the strap and the sculpt is because then I could kind of just stick it on there, glue it on there. And when plastic glue, it generally has better effects. So that's why I decided to do it. So here's a figure. This is actually from a bootleg that I'm recently starting to get my hands on in the stores. Is of course I'm talking about the Star Wars bootleg over here. And this thing is actually quite nice. I am very pleasantly surprised at the quality of this thing. If I would put this next to the original release, I won't be able to tell. So, but the only thing that I will be able to give it away is the fact that this actually moves quite wonkily. But other than that, it's fine, right? So I got the head sculpt, I got the body, I got the shoulder pads, and the paint. I'm going to use the Tamiya color. What color is it? It's called Mika Red TS39. and I would say that this matches with this pretty well. And then as for the sculpt, I'm going to use Tamiya epoxy putty to do the straps, right? So so how I'm going to do this, first order is to take this and get it Dremel so that I could actually start to begin to fit the thing in there, because I don't want to paint this whole thing and then have to do that, and it might end up being a mess and mess up the paint. I already had it, right? That's one thing. The other thing is to then, for the body, I need to erase, like, I need to take out these colors where I don't need them. And fortunately, there isn't much. It's probably these 4 spots over here, this, I'm going to have to paint over it. This I'm going to leave alone. This I'm going to paint over the shoulder pads. So that's this, and then there's a knee pads. This is going to be a pretty quick one. So yeah, just stay tuned and hang with it. Alrighty, as you could tell from my desk over here, you know, I very much just grinded this down inside over here. So as you can see, I use this attachment over here for Dremel. I know I should be using another one, but I just don't have it right now, so this one will do fine. And so this right now, it fits pretty well. It goes like this, and then later on, of course, I'm going to use the glue gun thing. Of course, when you guys use the Dremel, always use protection, because you don't want this stuff in your lungs, all right? So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to take this, I'm going to give it a light wash, just wash it with a little soap so that it's going to be nice and neat. Afterwards, I'm going to spray paint it with white primer, and then yeah, we're going to go from there. All right, I'm back. So I'm going to show you the progress of this. As you can see, this is not completely painted yet, but I'm going to do light coats, layer by layer. This I use the black primer, right? So it's very important to know that when you're doing these things, you just want to lay on light at a time. These things dry fast, so you don't have to wait long between the different layers, but it's best to just go slowly. Otherwise, it's very easy to cake things up, and then these little details will get lost, and it's just gonna get ugly. So bear with me, and I'm gonna be right back with the fully painted versions. Okay, while we're waiting for the paints to dry on the helmets, then let's work on removing the paints from these, okay? From the body. So I want to remove this part and this part. One thing you have to note is that there are different types of thinner. So this one I usually use to, it's usually good for many things. It could even eat through lacquer, from what I understand. This is nail polish remover. This stuff is absolutely strong. It's vicious. So I'm going to use it very sparingly, but I'll try using this first and see whether or not it could actually do the job. If so, I'm going to keep on using this. Otherwise, I might resort to this. The reason why I don't want to use this too sparingly, too roughly, is because this actually eats through plastic, and if you're not careful, it's going to start scarring this trooper. So what I'm going to do is, yeah, I'll get back to you. I'll do it on screen actually, just to see the first part, demonstrate to you, okay? So here we go. You get a cotton swab, all right? And I'm going to use this thinner over here, dip it in here. I'm going to kind of try it over here first, okay? This stuff really smells. It doesn't look like it's going to be strong enough. It's coming off a little bit, but it's not going to be strong enough for a purpose. Because if I'm going to sit here and do this, first of all, it's not going to be good enough to eat through, but it's just going to take me forever, and it might not even do the job that well. You can see it's starting to come off a little bit, but yeah, it's going to take forever. You could tell it probably needs some time to sit there before you could really remove it. Then what happened is you might need a lot of cotton swab for this, because it would start to after you get this dirty, then if you keep on going through the other parts, somehow it's gonna rub it right into the plastic itself. So I am going to switch to this. This is going to be super crazy. You're going to see how well it works, but you could also see a disaster coming on hand, because this is going to be brutal. In fact, you know what? I'm going to get some tissue paper ready just to wipe off the excess stuff, because you're going to see how crazy this one goes. Okay, so you ready? See? Wow. Okay, quickly, right? You're going to take the part that is clean, and repeat the same thing, and dab it very lightly. Don't rub it in, okay? Because it's going to just eat into the plastic. I think I'm going to use, I've already exhausted this end, so I'm going to use the next one. It feels kind of nice. It's a very cool feeling as it's getting to your skin. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3, quickly. See? And then later on, you might want to go in and just kind of clean it up afterwards, but in the meantime, just be really, really careful with this stuff. And be careful, don't knock it over. I'm going to keep it far away from me. It's amazing. Doing models, you have the most messed up chemicals you work with. So, you gotta be careful with it. So, I'm gonna take the rest off camera, but as you can see, it's starting to work pretty well to remove these paint. And I'll be right back. Hey, so one thing I want to really reiterate, as you can see, I'm pretty far along, but when you remove this, do it like this. Don't rub it in circular. I want to re-emphasize that, because what happened is you could easily then spread the paint into the clean parts and then rub it in, and you'll forever come out with kind of a pinkish type of armor. But so far it's good. So this is just want to remind you guys about it. Okay, just to review so far what we have. So we have the paint removed from here. This over here, I primed it pretty well. I could have cleaned this up a little bit, but it's fine. Message to John Walker. This stuff is amazing. I love just how sharp the details are. You know, you have won yourself a lifelong customer. But this is really nice. And this over here, this is a shoulder piece. The shoulder piece, please do note that on the back I did not put any paint on there. The reason is because later on I will be going in there with glue to glue this on here, and the last thing you want is paints to start unraveling. See, the last thing you want is paint to start unraveling while I'm actually gluing this stuff. So I decided to be careful not to spray the back part of it, okay? But the next step is actually to then actually put a clear coat over this. And the reason is because any work that we do on this afterwards can be, there's actually a kind of like kind of an insurance policy where if you make a mistake in there, you can actually remove it with an enamel thinner. Since the coat that I'm going to put on there is actually going to be lacquer. So an enamel thinner would not be able to eat through the lacquer. So if I use enamel paint on top of this after I put the coat on and it doesn't work, I could usually use thinner just to take it away and it still wouldn't eat up this white part over here. So, okay, so this is what I'm going to do next and I'll get back to you soon. Okay, so my next step is actually to start painting the helmet. So one of the parts is the red line coming through here, right? So I'm going to use these masking tape and they're very, very handy. But what you want to do is, if you're afraid that since you painted on top of this, the tape doesn't want to damage the surface, you might want to just start kind of just running it taping it onto your finger. So some of the finger will actually, you lose the adhesiveness a little bit, but it's fine. And then what you do is then you tape it up like this, carefully. There you go, like so, right? And then of course, then you run it through like that. Okay? And you're going to then repeat this on the other side. Now I'm not going to do the markings yet. I'm going to do it later separately. So here you go. Again, wearing magnifying glasses would actually help this part tremendously. Right, so use this part like that. Just want to make sure that the paints don't leak into there, right? These are going to be spray painting pretty hard. So, as you can see, I'm going to use this opportunity to also spray paint the body, right? So, in these parts over here, you would then see that I used the thinner tapes just so I could navigate more finely these areas. And then once this is masked, I'm going to then use maybe Scotch tape and thicker tape to then round out the rest of the body, and then I'll isolate these parts so I can spray paint it. Alright, you can see my desk is getting messier and messier as it progresses, but here you go. So this thing is wrapped up like a mummy and ready to go. So one thing I noticed is that when I use the white primer, the red would show up. The red that I have would show up really, really bright red, which is not what I want. And so I'm going to first prime it with a gray primer instead, so that it'll dull it down a little bit, so that it will achieve this thing. I tried with the black primer, I tried with the rust primer. Both of those didn't come out so well. So hopefully this will work out. All right. Okay, so just to briefly go over why I love these minuscule little masking tape thingies over here, is because with the different thicknesses that you could have, it allows you to get pretty creative and precise in terms of how you want to mask. So this is the Pauldron part, and as you can see, I've taped it up, and it allows you to just kind of play with it and then be able to eye it until you are satisfied with how it looks. Then you just squeeze it in to make sure that it's all nice and tight so it doesn't leak any paint, and you're ready to go. Alright guys, this is the moment of truth, and this is my favorite part. It is removing the tape after spray painting it. This part never gets old, so here we go. There you go. There you go. So if you guys can see it, this is the part over here. Right. And from the way it looks very good. It looks really good. Alright, so I got all this tape removed. This is what I came up with. I'm very happy with the way it turned out, because everything is smooth, nothing's chipping off, and as you can see, this red that I was using here versus the one that was originally used in the piece matches pretty well. You can't tell the difference. And so here you go. So far, this is what we have. This is the head sculpt, right? And then this is the shoulder pauldron, going down like this. So it's going to rest on like that, right? So that's pretty cool. All right, so there's a couple of things that I really need to do now. Is number one, to figure out how to then apply the two markings on here paint up the visor, paint up the rest of it, right? And then maybe doing some slight weathering. On the body, as I said, I might actually try to remove this and then paint it gray, right? And then over here, as I said, there's a strap that goes down here and down here also. And again, I told you, I do not want to just basically just slap on that stuff, the ribbon, and call it a day, right? So I want to do something a little bit better, because this is still a toy to me. I still want to be able to handle it and, you know, and play around with it without worrying that pieces just come peeling off and stuff, right? So I will, yeah, that's pretty much it. Okay, while I am waiting for everything to dry, all the paints to dry, I'm going to do something over here to demonstrate how I deal with some decals over here. So fortunately, as you guys all know, that Fordo's helmet actually have this thing. The second Phase 2 helmet actually have this thing on there, similar to what Captain Rex has, right? So what I did is this. Instead of getting the decals, I'm going to, you see how I'll handle this. I first took Scotch tape and I tape it over there so it's transparent. I take the panel lining marker and I trace over it over here like so. Try to be as exact as possible, but if not, it's okay, because what I'm doing over here is I am just kind of filling this out over here. Okay, and as you can tell, like some of them are not actually not very neat over here, but it's okay. I'm gonna take this out now. So previously I ended up step like this, right? I put it on top of a white piece of paper so I could see it clearly. This is what I've traced out of the helmet. Now, I then ran it through a photocopier and came out with this, right? But since this is a trace paper, I flip it back, good old trace paper, then I get the mirror image. Now, what I'm gonna do with this, right, is this. I'm later on going to put a masking sheet over this, and I'm gonna carefully use my X-Acto knife to cut this shape out, so that when it comes time for me to do this, to do the Fordo, to put on top of the helmet, I could then have kind of a masking guide for me to paint over it, and hopefully the way I cut it would be enough for it to not completely go to shits when I with a very sharp marking for this. But wish me luck. What I'm gonna do now is I made a photocopy of this just so if I mess up, I will have another one to go on. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this masking sheet, Hasegawa, is it? Yep, Hasegawa Tri-Tools. There's this application sheet. I'm gonna cut a little piece off. I'm not gonna use the entire sheet, obviously, and then I'm gonna tape over it, and I'm gonna carefully cut it out, right? Now, I have loaded up a new blade for this just to make sure it's nice and sharp, so that I could do this like very precisely. And so you guys will see what I'll be able to do with this then. So I don't know if you could see, but this one, it's relatively a success in terms of how it came out. So yeah, so I'm going to apply this onto the helmet now and basically try to paint over it. So I still have to be rather careful not to lay it on too thick, because what happened is the last thing I want is any part that I didn't do well enough, then it would just kind of slobber all over the inside of this, and this is not what I want. right? So it seems like a pretty decent coverage, right? Except for right here, there's a part that could do a little bit better. Okay, so it's gonna dab it on like that, right? I'm gonna wait for it to, so before I wait for it to dry, I'm just gonna peel it right off and see how it is. Yeah, that looks very risky. There you go, hey, not too bad. I mean, it could be better. There's these parts, I better not point it out with this. There are these parts over here. This part over here that could do a little bit better. This has to probably be scraped off a little bit, but it's fine. It came out better than I thought. So let me see how I could do it, especially this little dot over here. Now I really appreciate the minuscule details of the paint apps in Hasbro, because yeah, it's just looking at this. I mean, it's just so fine of a detail that you have to kind of account for. Okay, so this turns out okay. This is the second side. One little boo-boo I did was that this one, as you can tell, is actually slightly higher than this one. But you know what? I think overall it came out better than I thought. It could have been a lot worse. But yeah, I think I'll go on. I'll put a clear coat over this, and then I'll move on to the next step. Next, I'm going to paint up the visor. But what I'm going to do first is I'm going to fill up the edge with the panel liners, right? So remember, I've sprayed this over with some lacquer paints over here, lacquer clear coat. So what I'm going to do is you got this. The reason that this works so well is because it just works itself to fill up the gap. And don't worry if it gets a little bit messy over here, right? Because what happened is later on, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to clean it up with the other stuff. So I'm going to actually go in a little bit over here. This stuff is quite temperamental. So boom, 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 like that. The stuff from John Walker Custom is quite good because it just kind of filled the. It's already pretty. It's already pretty good in terms of. Oops, got a little thing over here. It's already pretty good already with its sharp details, right? So I think this is pretty good to begin with. I'm going to leave it alone for now, and then later on I'm going to go in and clean it up. Okay, so I've already done some cleaning up over here. So as I said before, I've already coated this with lacquer, clear coat. And so this stuff being epoxy, not epoxy, enamel, then once you lay it on like that, you see all these like little dirty spots over here. What it is I'm going to use the X20 thinner from Tamiya Colors, right? And these are strong enough to clean up enamel, but not enough to eat through lacquer. So what would end up happening is you already have a coat of white paint underneath here. That won't be damaged too much if you're not too rough with it. And what you do is you take a tiny cotton swab, and then you just go in there and just do your best to clean it up like that, right? And so what ended up happening is, ooh, it's starting to bleed into here. Hey, these things are so temperamental. But anyways, as you go in here, you could start cleaning it up like that. And there are going to be spots over here that's going to be a bit dirty, but if you're patient enough. So what will end up happening is, even though the middle of the visor is not colored in. The edge is already done. The panel liner already did the job for you. So all you need to do is just go back and just kind of fill in this thing without worrying too much about the edge, and you're going to come up with a really, really neat thing, a neat coverage. Now I actually went in with a panel liner pen over here. And then I just pretty much went in to fill out the visor. And on the mouthpiece, I just used paint, black paint to do it. So it's those two little dots on the side over there, little rivets. So the way it turned out, I'm quite happy with it. There's some spots over here that are a little bit blemished, but it's fine. So this is pretty much finished, the base paint of it. And I'm going to go back to working on the body strap. And afterwards, then I'll do some weathering. Alright, now while I'm waiting for the other parts to clear, I'm going to work on the strap. Now, from the source material, it seems like the strap just goes down here. However, I'm going to make it maybe go like this instead. I don't know. But the way I want to do it is that, you remember Gree, right? How he has a strap and it only goes down to the top of the torso and ends there in a plastic piece. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to probably, you know what? I might actually go on the side. And I'm going to kind of just use this tape right now as a guide, right? It looks kind of weird. Actually, it looks fine. It just goes across like that. So I'm going to make this to make it out to look a little bit better, a little bit more natural. Maybe I'll just do it like this, right? Down to here, as opposed to all the way on the side over here, right? Go down to here, like that, right? And then this is going to be covered up by this, so it looks fine like that. And in the back, I'm probably going to do the same. So, like this. And you're going to see what I'm going to do next, right? So, now I'm going to do it like that. Take the same side, rip out a piece of tape. And so it goes like this. I would surmise it's probably going to go like this around the back over here, like that, like this, right? And usually I'll use plow plates to kind of do this, but as I've shown in previous videos, the plow plates are actually very temperamental. Sometimes you just can't rely on it to stick. So instead of just weaseling around with this and with the potential of it coming apart in the future, I'm going to sculpt it out of epoxy putty. All right. So now that you have this, what I'm going to do is then I'm actually going to take a couple pieces like that, like this. This is acting as a guide, right? So I'm going to tape it right up against this. Because what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to take the one that I just laid down before, I'm going to take it out and I'm going to put putty on that part to stick to the plastic. So I have it here like that, right? And I'll have it like this. All right. Oh. here, now that I have the tool here, I'm gonna rip it out like this. There you go. This is the part, right? Okay, so now that I have both sides like this, right? What I'm going to do next is I'm going to take epoxy putty. And this is a two-part mix. If you guys don't know how to use it, then look at other videos. But the way I do it, I line it up and just cut it up like that. Just so you get the equal parts, right? Then you're going to knead it together, like so. Take the plastic out. Make sure you have some water on hand, because what you want to do next is this stuff is very hard to manage if your hands are not wet, and you have to constantly keep it moist. It's a little balancing game that you have to play over here, because you can't have it too wet, but you can't have it too dry, because they just come right off like that, right? Put some water in here, otherwise it's going to stick to your finger like crazy. And knead it down like that. Okay, now that I knead it to pretty much what I think it works well with, I'll take a little thing, and I take this. I make a long shape out of this. Stretch it out like that. And then I am going to lay it on like so. Maybe it has to be a little bit longer. Just a little bit too whatever. Lay it down like that. Over it. Okay. Oops. Like this. Take this. Don't worry if the top don't go so pretty at this point, because what I'm going to do, as you can tell, is we're going to later on like sand this down. So it doesn't matter, just don't lay it on too thick but not lay it on too thin, because we're going to have to sand it down later. Right, so just have a little piece over here. There you go. I think this is a good foundation right here, right? You kind of use the water and kind of smooth it out. The reason you have to use water is that otherwise, if you don't use water, it's just going to stick to your hand and it's going to come right off. Okay, so once the epoxy has laid down for about an hour to cure, I would then use the X-Acto knife to cut along that piece of tape that I have laid down on top of the epoxy. This will then create a sharp and straight edge to the strap. Now, why do I want to wait for the epoxy to cure for about an hour? It is because if you don't, then as you're cutting down it, this epoxy is actually very, very unwieldy in the beginning form before it cures. So it's going to start sticking in your hand, it's going to rip the other parts away. It's not going to be good. But then if you wait for too long, past an hour, you would also be in danger of having the piece crack, because it's a very thin piece and epoxy very brittle at that state too. So about an hour would be good for it to be in a state where you could actually make this cut and be able to remove it successfully. Then of course, afterwards you sand it, so it will be nice and even piece. Next, I'm going to remove the belt. So the way I do is I find an inconspicuous spot and then just make a cut along it. So once you remove the belt, when you reattach the belt to the figure, you actually have to lay the glue onto the waist itself and glue the belt onto it. So what I'm going to do is, even though I'm painting it, as you could see, I have actually taped up the interior of the belt so that the paint doesn't get on it. And for those of you who are familiar with other videos that shows this trick, basically you attach the Vaseline onto the ball joint of the neck, so that when later on you will inject the glue into the head. You put it on, and then once the glue cures, the Vaseline will enable you to still be able to articulate the ball joint instead of getting stuck to the glue gun's glue. Now for the buckle. So this piece is going to be painted in silver, and as some of you might know, if you were to prime it in black and then spray the silver onto the black, it would actually come out to be better. Now we move on to weathering. So as many of you know, there are several layers to weathering, and the first one is the general grime of the armor. There are many videos out there that shows this, so I'm not going to get too deep into the technical. All I want to say is, while I understand that people want to go for realism and show that this soldier has been through many battles, you don't want it to make it look like it is a toy that is dragged out from somebody's grandmother's attic or something you get in a garage sale. So you want to do it very judiciously and apply it in places that would make the most sense, such as closer to the feet and somewhere around the broadside of the armor. But that's it. Make it very sparing so that you convey the idea, but you don't necessarily make the figure look like it's completely dragged through mud. Now, if I'm going to offer something that's going to be different from what I've seen in other weathering videos, there's one technique that I use often with the colored parts. In this case, it's going to be the red parts. What I do is I will take sponge and I'll dip it into, in this case, the white primer. And then I will pretty much dry out the sponge until there's very little left. And I'll just run it along the edge and maybe around the broadside of the red parts, just to give you the idea that it's actually fading away and chipping in some cases. And of course, the chipping part. Now, most people use this brush. I just basically use the panel liner pen just to make it easier to control, and use, of course, you just dot it around the edges, around places that will most likely get dings and scratches, and then you just use it to highlight the edges to give it a little more pop. So this concludes this really long video. For those who stuck around until the end, I hope that you have extracted something from it. And thank you so much for tuning in. So until next time, I will leave you with some final shots of how this custom turns out.